Good morning, everybody. Romel Santiago here once again. So, uh, one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm pointing out is uh, I was recently asked this question, like, why do we have to review the goals every 3 months? So I'm doing an intake, and I ask the client, hey, why are you coming into therapy? What's your plan? Why do you want to you know see me? Um, and so I explain. They explain why they're coming in. I'm like, great. I just collected your words, and we're gonna revisit these particular words every 3 months in order to make sure that we're heading in the direction that you want to be heading into. Well, every 3 months, that's odd. One client had informed me that they had never done that with a previous therapist, and every therapist works differently. Other clients have said, well, that sounds a little frequent. Why don't we just do it every 6 months to a year? One of the reasons why I, as a therapist, and why Romeo Sensation LLC does it every 3 months is because it can get really easy to get sidetracked. If you're coming into therapy because, let's say, um, you're struggling with ED or pain during penetration, well, it's not uncommon once medical is ruled out. It's not uncommon for these things to be tied to anxiety or some other. It can be anxiety, it can be depression, it can be hormones, it can be lots of different things. But just because you're in therapy doesn't mean life stops. So, a couple weeks into it, you wind up having an argument with your brother that ruptures the relationship. Well, it can get really, really easy to get sidetracked on that, right? Because that's now taking precedent. Why we do it every 3 months is because I want to make sure that I am holding myself accountable and that you are holding me accountable. Because if you're paying through insurance or if you're paying out of pocket, it's the same thing. You are paying. You are paying for a service. And in order for you to make sure that you are getting the most out of this service, I need to make sure that I'm actually still on track. I want to make sure that we're still heading in the direction that you want to be heading. But I also want to make sure that the direction that you want to go to hasn't changed. On top of all of that, I also want to make sure that the direction that you said that you wanted to head into, we're not continuing past this point. If we've met your goal, I want to know. You want to know. This is an opportunity for us to revisit this particular goal because the goal that we come up with in the first session is a long term goal for therapy. The goals that we come up with every 3 months are shorter term that helps us to make sure that we're heading in that particular direction, right? Think of it this way. When we plan a trip, let's say we plan a trip from Florida to Seattle, Washington, from Miami, Florida to Seattle, Washington. Great. That is the long term goal. And we decide we're going to drive. Well, now we want to plan rest points. We want to plan, all right, what cities or states are we going to stop and take a break? What cities and states do we want to stop and see? Are there any particular places like we're going to Seattle? We might want to see Mount Rushmore. That's going to take us in a slightly different direction. We're still going to get to Seattle, but we may want to take a couple of detours along the way. We may want to stop in my hometown Chicago for some deep dish pizza and for some Chicago style hot dogs, right? That means it's not a direct line. That means that the direction that we're heading into, once we get to this 3 month mark, we then decide, is there something that we need to detour, or do we continue? How do we continue? What direction? Which interstate? Right? Every 3 months is that plan to check in and see where we're heading, how it's going. And also, is this particular relationship between the both of us functioning? Do you still want to see me? That's probably a really important question. Do I want to see you? Are you putting in the work? Every couple of treatment plan reviews, I do have the come to Jesus conversation with folks. Hey, you're in therapy. Therapy is going to end. And when it ends, are you going to be as prepared as you are? Maybe I'm not the right therapist for you. Maybe we need to explore other options. But the treatment plan review isn't uh, just because I have nothing better to do and I just want to take a break. It's because it's a wonderful opportunity to assess the relationship, which is the perfect time to practice how are we assessing some of the other relationships in our lives? How are we making sure that as we grow, we're having some of those conversations, we're restructuring our boundaries, we're checking in with with other relationships that we have. Therapy is the perfect practice relationship because it allows us to learn how to do these things, to learn how to have some of those difficult conversations. So to make sure that the relationships that we're engaged in are continuing ahead in the direction that we need them to. So, um, the treatment plan review is probably one of the most important components of the therapeutic relationship because this is the check-in. This is this relationship still functioning? So I hope you get something out of that. And anything that this is not a substitute for any kind of therapy. If your therapist is doing things differently than how I'm describing, I'm only describing Romeo Sensation LLC. If you find something useful in these videos and you want to go back to your therapist to talk about, then fine. I am not, unless we have a contract, I am not your therapist. I am not stepping on any of the toes of your therapist. And I do not want to step on the toes of your therapist because your therapist probably knows you a hell of a lot more than I know you. So make sure that you're continuing these conversations if you find something useful or if it contradicts something that you've already been told by your therapist. So, that being said, we do have to pause, but I hope you have a wonderful, amazing rest of this beautiful day, and I will see you soon.